All right, YouTube, it is Mr. Mean coming at you live from Duluth, Minnesota. It is crazy sunny outside, but it is minus 10 degrees right now. It is frickin' cold, even for Mr. Mean. My hate can only keep me so warm. But aside from that, some good housekeeping to get out of the way. As always, like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Hit that bell to be dinged when I dong so you don't go doom. As always, I'll put notes down in the doobly-doo. I'm not on Patreon anymore. It's been a week since I've done a video. A lot's happened in my personal life. I got laid off. My wife has been very sick and my son has been very sick, and I had to take a lot of time off of work. I was a contractor. It is what it is. I've already started applying for jobs, and I'm looking for more work, and hopefully something will come about as soon as it does. For those of you that want to help support the channel, I'm on Zelly. If you have a mobile app on your phone for your bank, you can send donations that way. You can always email me at jpolak@gmail.com for more information if you'd like to send me anything. If you want something reviewed, I'm always happy to receive physical books, and you can contact me. I'll do a review if it's something that I haven't covered on the channel and you want to see it reviewed. I'm also on MeWe and Discord. The links will be in the doobly-doo. But today's video du jour is... I don't know how to describe it. I don't want to say it's old or new because it's still relevant, but it's not because, well, shit happens, and it's Fantasy Flight. And we all love Fantasy Flight. They produce amazing books, but Fantasy Flight has a reputation for abandoning projects. Fireborn, prime example. Midnight, another prime example. I mean, Midnight would be a great setting to convert over to 5th edition, or even their own setting. Put it out in Tyranoth, or not Tyranoth, Genesis. Convert Midnight to Genesis. That would be amazing. But we are not here to talk about dead games, or are we? Dun, dun, dun. Dark Heresy. Specifically, we're going to talk about both. Dark Heresy. I have a love-hate relationship with this game because it's a great game. Visually, it's stunning. It looks great. The production value on the game is top-notch. They pulled out all the stops. I'm gonna put a little note in chat here to tell everybody that we're here. Just so the chat works. I don't know why they do that, but it's annoying. Anyway, sorry for the glare, but it's nice and sunny outside, and there's lots of snow, and so it creates a glare, and I don't feel like closing the blinds. So there you go. 2008, this hit the shelf. Dark Heresy. You play apprentices to a Inquisitor, which anybody who follows the Warhammer 40k lore knows that Inquisitors, everybody's afraid of Inquisitors. And when you initially read the book and wow, I work for an Inquisitor and I've got all this power and it's amazing. You know, Azala says, hello, I've got my Dark Heresy books on the table in front of me. Love the game, but trying to sell them. Yeah, I feel your pain, man. I have a hard time selling my books. I love them. As you can see from that collection. That shelf, by the way, is 8 feet tall and about 5 feet wide. So that's a lot of books. And I've got boxes over here on the side full of them. But the joy with this game, the love-hate relationship that I have, is part of it is Fantasy Flight's fault and part of it is Black Library. The initial book was, from my understanding, was written and published by Black Library. They provided all the flavor text and the somewhat of the rules, and then Fantasy Flight just put it all together and published it. And that's fine. And there was a number of books, and you can see on the shelf there's quite my big ass shoulders in the way. See, get my camera working here again. Right in that area, that's all my Dark Heresy stuff. I have Only War. I have the Space Marine one, the Chaos one, and they're great for lore and for setting and for the aesthetics of the book and the graphic design. Black Crusade book. Only need The Tome of Decay. Yeah, I feel you, Azala. I hope I'm saying it right. And thanks for the subscribe. Azala is a new subscriber. He posted on my video, I guess, early this morning for Esper Genesis. And I believe it was Esper Genesis. Correct me if I'm wrong. But evidently, he or she is looking through some of my content and has decided to subscribe. So thank you very much. Appreciated. It was. Thanks. This is near and dear to my heart. I love it. The art in here is fantastic. There were some issues with the first edition book falling apart. The binding would come apart and didn't hold up very well. Mine seems to have stood the test of time, but in all fairness, I do faintly recall that I contacted FFG and said, hey, my book's falling apart, and they sent me a new book, because this one, you can see it's glued and it's stitched. And this one is not falling apart. You don't hear the cracking of the glue. A lot of times when they use a cheap glue and book binding, it'll crack, make popping noises. And obviously you can see I'm flipping through this, and it is not. So why two versions of a game? One in 2008 and one in 2014. Almost identical page count. Art's completely different in the book. I don't think they recycled any art. I will say at the time that this book came out, I thought it was gorgeous. I still think it's gorgeous, as obviously I own both. Because again, I've stated I have a hard time getting rid of books. It's not easy for me to do it. It causes anxiety, and I get all upset. Great art, percentile system with some D10s used. Mechanics were kludgy. Was not well received. Everyone was gung-ho and excited about this game when it came out. The copies flew off the shelf, and then people started playing it. And then all the comments started coming in. And a lot of people were very unhappy. You worked for an Inquisitor, but 99.9% of every adventure starts off with, you work for Inquisitor Bazu. You cannot mention that you work for the Inquisitor. So you're basically a bunch of grunts on a planet or a spaceship or a space station doing Inquisitor's work, but you have none of the authority or the abilities of an Inquisitor or a said person who works for an Inquisitor. So that was a pet peeve to a lot of people. I'm working for an Inquisitor. I should be able to flaunt my power somewhat. Obviously, you don't want to go around, screaming you work for an Inquisitor. That'll get you bumped off real quick by the chaos and the ne'er-do-wells and all the bad guys. This spawned a bunch of spin-off games: Only War, Black Crusade, obviously Dark Heresy, and Rogue Trader. Rogue Trader was Adeptus Custodes, and they solved crime. Yeah, a lot of people, Azala, did that. I included, because working for the Adeptus Custodes, which for those that don't know, in the Imperium, that's basically the police department, space cops, and it gave you a little bit more authority, because you started out. So let me rephrase it. You start out in this galaxy working for the most powerful entity in known space, for the most part, the Imperium. And you have access to all of the Imperium of man's goods. You can't get them. They're denied to you. You're just a lowly apprentice to an Inquisitor. You don't get cool shit. You can later on in the game. And I think what the problem for this game is, they didn't set the expectation up front. They threw you into this galactic environment. There's all this cool stuff in the catalog and the equipment guide, and you can't get 90% of it. I think my starting character I made, and also your attributes were subpar. You had about a 40% chance to succeed on any given skill test, percentage-based system. If you were lucky, you had a 42 to a 48% chance to succeed at whatever your given core thing was. And while that sounds cool to start out, it's not helpful when you're trying to be an adventurer in a game. Sorry, my Discord was going off there. I turn my phone down now. Everything's blowing up. chaos. Obviously, the gods of chaos have blown through. So that's where the game fell short. People were excited to play, Inquisitors, and they marketed it as such that you were going to play, Inquisitors. You were working for an Inquisitor, and that you were going to have, this uber power and cool abilities, and you didn't get any of that. In one of my games that I ran, my Psyker, low-level Psyker, did a TPK because the dice rolls screwed him. And I mean, that can happen in any game. You can critical fail in any game, but it shouldn't cause a TPK. He went to use his psychic power called Levitate, and I don't remember the exact everything that happened because it was years ago, right around 2008. But he caused everybody in the area to levitate in this huge area on a ship, and they all went up super high, and because of the chaos powers, it multiplied it. The winds of chaos got involved, and then the power abruptly turned off, and everybody fell, quite a ways down and took a shitload of damage. And so, I mean, the bad guys died as well, but it was pretty much incapacitated the whole party. And at that point, we were all like, this is not fun. This is not what we want to do. And we turned the game off, and we never touched it again after that. It wasn't until years later that I came back to play this again with some friends in Louisiana, and the same thing. Unfortunately happened. The one player, he went, not a friend of mine. He was a friend of a friend, or he was an acquaintance of a friend who played in our game, and he tanked our game on purpose. And he knew the rules, he knew the game, but he was running the game, and, well, to say the least, he was not a good GM. And so everyone had said, hey, John, why don't you run it? I will give him kudos in the fact that evidently he runs an excellent Call of Cthulhu game, but running this type of game that's a little bit more action oriented with some investigation just wasn't his cup of tea. And that's okay. Not every game is for everybody. I don't run Cthulhu because I don't do horror well. I do action horror okay, but I don't do mystery horror. I'm not a mystery guy. That's just not my cup of tea. Asla is saying, try to use a power, summon a bloodthirster. Okay. Oh, you guys. Cue laugh track and ending theme. Yes. Yeah. The critical tables on this game were very unforgiving. It was almost like they were trying to capture the feel of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay in its critical tables, which were amazing, and they failed to do it. And I think part of that problem is you had too many hands in the pot. That's just my opinion. You had the Black Library guys who wanted to maintain creative control over it, and everything had to be done their way. And then the Fantasy Flight Games who were trying to make a game that would sell. And not just off of the IP or the intellectual property. And so, gorgeous book. Like I said, some printing issues. I saw a lot of reviews and stuff where people were saying their early books were falling apart. A beautiful sector map in the background. Typical Fantasy Flight and Warhammer production value. Character sheets were great. This was in the early days. The internet taking off. 2008, internet had been around obviously for a while, but still wasn't as robust as it is today. So character sheets were scanned in. They weren't printer friendly. I remember all of that. But we're looking at 395 pages and then a couple pages of art for the first edition book. And they put out a ton of supplements for this. This and Rogue Trader, I think, had the most amount of supplements. Great. I mean, just a whole bunch of good stuff. And if, like I said, if you're a fan of the 41st Millennium and the 40K universe, and you would just want the fluff, the first half of this book is all fluff, and the art is well done in it. The layout of the book is fantastic. It's just amazing. I mean, they knocked it out of the park. Nice drawings for the weapons and stuff. I'm trying to see if I can find a nice full page art. Here's a nice, Adeptus guy of some kind, some sort of tech. The art in the book is fantastic. You had very cool character classes and abilities. Creating a character was a lot of fun. I'm in my opinion, it was probably the best part of the game. And for a game to grab me, it has to have a good character creation because it gets you excited about your character. And this game did it. You got I believe it was 1,000 experience points once you rolled up your attributes, and you use those 1,000 experience points to buy within your career field. So very much like Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, you had careers, and then you went through that progression of those careers, and then you could move out. But it was not terribly easy. Wasn't super hard, but it wasn't easy either. But I mean, you could. Let me just get to the list of characters here and see. Even gave you advice on creating your own characters. So your starting characters that were presented in the core book were the adeptus or the adept, which are basically knowledgeable scholars and logisters, which you need those, and they got cool. And here's the thing: none of the character classes in this book, in my opinion, sucked. They all had their, and I know people who like to play accountants. There was something in here for everybody. Arbitrators, which are basically your cops, your assassins, exactly what they say, your cleric, which were priests, diplomats, and leaders of men, your guardsmen, basically your thugs, your imperial psyker, practitioners of psychic disciplines, scum. Yes, you could play scum. And then a tech priest, keepers of mysterious technology. So those were your basic character classes. And then they had levels inside of them, which you could progress as you gained experience. So, and I thought it was a great game. Like I said, I was always excited to run a campaign of this. And then we'd make those first couple of rolls and someone would botch a roll because of the way the mechanics work and wind up killing or hosing everybody. So it was not a lot of fun. At least not for the players. If you had players that were die hard into it, then they could overlook it. Like I was willing to overlook it as a GM and fudge some numbers here and there, but a lot of people were not, and it would get very disenfranchised with the game and upset about it. So that was first edition, and then 2014 came along, and Warhammer, our Games Workshop went through a board of directors and management change somewhere right around 13, 14, 15, 2013, 14, 15. And the powers that be decided to, for lack of a better word, and this is my opinion, I don't know if this is fact, this is just what I'm observing from the market. They loosened the reins. They said, hey, we're not going to be this dickhead company that is uber righteous about our product and nobody can touch it and make things unless we say it's okay. And for whatever reason, management changed and the powers that be loosened up. And I don't know what happened. Maybe the board of directors had a change of heart. Maybe they realized money was getting tight around that time and people were spending less. Whatever the reason may be, things changed at GW. And all of a sudden we have the second edition of Dark Heresy. And I'm going to tell you right now, I love the first edition. I thought it was a good game. I still think it's a good game. It had its quirks. It had its foibles. You could tell where the writing and the rules conflicted if you read it. But it was still fairly well done, and I appreciated it, and I enjoyed it. Fast forward to 2014, and we get Dark Heresy second edition. And I fell in love all over again. The art is fantastic. The layout of the book is amazing. Same stitched red binding that's glued. My copy is new. I have yet to play this. In fact, I barely have looked at this book. You can hear the glue cracking in there a little bit. Is it going to hold up as well as my first edition book? I don't know. I hope it does. I'm going to tell you right off the bat, the layout and presentation from first edition to second edition, night and day. I thought this was a gorgeous book. I like the layout. This knocks the fucking socks off of it. This is laid out so well, in my opinion. The graphics design, the dark parchment feel of the paper that they went with. Here's an example of it. It's just, the art is phenomenal in the book. This is the inside cover. It's amazing. Just some huge spire. Instead of having the black and white graphical drawings, we have full color art for the weapons. So we know what our weapons look like, which is even cooler. Nice color for NPCs and powers and things. It's just really laid out well. Very, visually stunning, and I like that. I like when a book is consistent. If you've watched my channel, you know that it's a huge pet peeve for me to have inconsistent art or design in a book. And now, that being said, I am not a designer. I am not a layout specialist, but I know what looks good to my eyes. And part of my reviews is to help you make an informed decision. Some people won't like this yellowy parchment feel. It may not work for their eyes. For these old and tired eyes, I feel that it does. But I mean, you know, we've got some cultists fighting some of our Inquisitor, you know, lackeys, troubleshooters. The art is just the art and the layout of the book. The fiction that is interspaced between it is very well done. The characters, the NPCs that they give you are just super well done. Here's some psychic powers, and they lay them out really well. Asla is saying, my biggest issue now is just Fantasy Flight. Hate getting into something, buying into it, and then just ends without warning or explanation. Asla, you are absolutely correct. That's what I don't know if you were watching the very beginning of the video, but that is exactly what I said. I have several Fantasy Flight games up there that Midnight, fantastic 3.0. I don't even remember it was converted to 3.5. Fantastic D&D basic setting or any fantasy setting. It just happened to use the 3.0 rules. Midnight was basically what if Sauron had won. They never come out and say it's Lord of the Rings, but it's pretty much that's what it is. There's an evil entity, mage, that basically, you know, elves are pretty much gone, dwarves are slaves, halflings are you know, killed on sight, that kind of thing. It's a very dark setting for D&D. And they put out a book and I think 2 or 3 supplements at most, and then the game just went away. They just dropped it. I don't know. They have the OGL. Anybody can print to the OGL, so they could have kept making product and they stopped. I don't know why. If anybody knows why, that's not, you know, conjecture or rumor, you know, but knows for a reason why, then, you know, go for it. Aslo's saying they recently announced the Netrunner RPG, but they only just recently canned the card game, so I'm incredibly cautious about it. Their new cash cow, since they lost the Warhammer license for whatever reason, either Games Workshop chose to move in a different direction, or they did. We don't know, but they still have the Star Wars license, which is a big cash cow for them, and they've gone wholeheartedly into their Genesis system. We'll switch gears here for a second at the well, I don't even know what mark I'm recording at. It doesn't tell me. Oh, 22. So at the 23-minute mark, we're going to stop talking about Dark Heresy, and we're going to start talking about Genesis just real quick. Fantasy Flight had a very huge popularity with its Star Wars gaming system and their storytelling or narrative dice system, which is the funny dice, which are still the dice, you know, your D8s, your D6s, your D12s, that they use for their narrative dice system. They decided to do much like what Green Ronin did. Green Ronin produced Dragon Age for BioWare as a tabletop RPG, immensely successful. I have the box sets up there, and I have the condensed collector's edition of the actual Dragon Age RPG. Green Ronin decided to produce their Age system, or the Adventure Game Engine, AGE. Much like Green Ronin, Fantasy Flight went the same route and said, hey, everybody loves this system, and we see people, you know, producing fan-made product for a fantasy version. I forgot the name of it, but there's Red Shirt Diaries or whatever is a webpage. If you just do a Google search, I actually have a review of their fantasy version of Star Wars that they've done, with Emperor Palpatine being the evil mage and Darth Vader being the big head evil knight, and then his Sith warriors being assassins and stuff. But anyway, go in the archive, check that out. But Fantasy Flight said, hey, we've got a cash cow here. These Star Wars books are flying off the shelf, and they're not flying off the shelf just because they're cool Star Wars stuff. They're flying off the shelf because people like the game mechanic. They like the narrative dice system. And don't forget, it came out at a time where Dungeon World and Powered by the Apocalypse games were uber popular. So people were shifting away from just basic hack and slash and going to a more narrative storytelling system. And so Fantasy Flight was quick to realize that. And so they came out with the Genesis RPG, which was a generic Gen Sys system, Genesis, Genesys. Their first system they came out with wholeheartedly for their IP was Tyrannoth, Realms of Tyrannoth, which is based on their RuneQuest and Descent board games, which if you know, I'm a huge fan. I also have a review of Descent in the archive. Go check it out. Asla says he's the only fan that probably doesn't like Star Trek or Star Wars. No, sir, you're not. A lot of my viewers are the same way, and I'm kind of in the same boat. I do like Star Wars. I like that epic fantasy sci-fi story setting and everything, but there are better games out there that do it. Case in point, much better game. That's my opinion. I've got a review. Go check it out. But anyway, back to on topic. Fantasy Flight realized they had a cash cow, so they threw out Genesis. They put out Realms of Tyrannoth. They own the IP. They don't have to pay any licensing. It's their product. It's all pure cash. It's all money. Realms of Tyrannoth, got a review of it. Did really well. Love it. Think it's a great setting. Great, hard fantasy setting. I like it a lot. And then they came out with, or they're about to come with, In the Shadow of the Beanstalk, I believe it's called, which is the Netrunner expansion. Again, they own the IP for Netrunner. So if you want a cyberpunk game or hard cyberpunk, and you don't want to wait for Cyberpunk 2075 or 77, whatever it's going to be from Artel Saurian Games, which is coming out, and I hope to have Mike Pondsmith on the channel for a review. I've reached out to his people, and it sounds like it's a go. We're just waiting for the video game to get done because he's traveling back and forth to Poland. Anyway, we've rambled on enough. It is 26:48, so at roughly 27 minutes, we'll go back into talking about Dark Heresy. But that's where the Fantasy Flight stuff came from, and why Fantasy Flight has abandoned a lot of their games. I hope to see Fireborn redone as a Genesis adaptation. They own the IP. It's their game as far as I know, and they should hopefully be able to put something out for it, or even the Midnight setting. I would love to see that. Those books are hard to get a hold of. But anyway, back to Dark Heresy 2.0. Everything I loved about first edition is in here. The difference is they cleaned up the rules. I'm going to put a link in the doobly-doo down below to a Reddit, I believe it's Reddit column, or one of the other gaming sites where they talk about what the changes are between first edition and second edition. I don't want to rehash them here. One of the biggest things, though, is a lot of rules clarification. Still a D100 or a D10 roll, but they clarified a lot and made it a lot cleaner. Also, Fantasy Flight was given, in my opinion, a lot more freedom to write the rules, as opposed to the first edition of Dark Heresy, where Black Library was all in there and dictating to them what they can and can't do, or going back and forth. I'm not sure. That's good to know on their official Discord, Asla. I am a huge Mike Pondsmith fan and a Cyberpunk fan. So will I pick up Shadow of the Beanstalk? I don't know. I'm unemployed right now, so money is tight, and it's on my list. I might try to get it as a PDF. I don't know. But right now, the name alone is enough to turn me off. I think it is a stupid name. Maybe it has something to do with the lore of Netrunner. I never played the card game. I was not into it. I'm a Cyberpunk through and through fan. Mona Lisa Overdrive, I think, is a cool name. I understand why they couldn't use that, but just call it Cyberpunk. They could have called it Cyberpunk, or they could have called it Netrunner, but maybe they don't own the rights to Netrunner. I don't know. But I just know that Beanstalk title is stupid. Yes, the Beanstalk is I forgot what they call it, but it's a huge elevator that goes from Earth to a big station up in space, a rail of some kind. It's still stupid. Sorry, that's my opinion, but we're neither here nor there. So a lot of rules clarification, a lot of cleanup, complete reformat of the book. So if you didn't like first edition for the art, or you didn't like the aesthetics of it, give this one a look. You might like it. Now here's the downside. they no longer have the license. So you can only find this book in it's the correct opinion. Thank you, Asla. You can buy this. I think Fantasy Flight may still have stock. I'm fortunate enough to live here in Duluth. The Twin Cities is only a 2.5 drive away from me. So I can go down there to the Fantasy Flight store, which is based out of Minneapolis, and I could pick up anything I'm missing. And I'm probably going to do that once I get back to work and things settle down. I was going to try and make it to GaryCon this year, which is big convention in Wisconsin for Gary Gygax in his honor, where they play a lot of old school RPGs. I was going to go there and play some Dungeon Crawl Classic and maybe even run something, but unfortunately, with no job on the horizon and the convention about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks away, it's obviously not going to happen. So I'm a little bummed about that, but I'm trying to keep a positive attitude. And I started looking for work today. I filled out a couple resumes or applications and stuff. So I'm definitely looking for work. I got to keep up this hobby. But again, second edition, pretty easy to come by. You could probably find copies on eBay. Amazon may even have copies. If they do, I'll put a link in the doobly-doo. But completely redone game. I think it's worth your time. Is it a buy for Mr. Mean? Wholeheartedly. If you're a fan of Warhammer 40K, if you play the miniatures game and you just want some more lore, or buy it from Asla because he's selling it. So reach out to Asla, maybe put an email in there, Asla. Maybe somebody will catch it and hit you up. It's a solid game. If you're miniature players playing in the 40K universe and you want to try an RPG, there's Wrath and Glory. I don't know anything about it. I skipped it. I had no interest in it because I have all of these books. And to me, they're still pertinent. They're still relative. Plus, I didn't like the mechanics that Wrath and Glory uses from what little I saw. I'm sure it's a phenomenal game. I have no doubt about that. It's just not my cup of tea. Now, if the designers or the creators of the game want to send me a copy to review, be more than happy to review it. But I'm not going to go out and buy it anytime soon unless I see it on a discount rack somewhere and for a decent price, and then I'll pick it up. This is going to run you $55.99. So $56 for this book, or again, you can buy it from Asla. But I think it's worth it. You might be able to find the PDF. I don't know what Fantasy Flight's rules are with Games Workshop and if they can still sell their physical copies that they have left. I'm sure you can go into the Fantasy Flight store either online or physically in Minneapolis and pick up a copy of this. I'm going to maybe in a couple of weeks, once I get back to work, as soon as I get back to work, I plan on when the weather gets a little bit better and it's not so bristly cold outside, I'm going to make a rollout to Minneapolis to go back to the Fantasy Flight store and maybe pick up a copy if I can. So that's it. Like I said, I'll put a link in the doobly-doo down below detailing the differences between the two. Somebody did a really nice job, but I was looking to do a video and do some content, and I realized that I haven't covered Dark Heresy first and or second edition, and I wanted to rectify that. And so I had some time to get it done today in between working on resumes and filling out applications. So painful, so tedious. But, got to do what I got to do. So that's it for Mr. Mean. We're coming up. We just passed the 33-minute mark. I just wanted to get a quick video out there. Let me go in and tweak this and edit it and everything. Asla says he knows the feeling, man. Thank you. I appreciate it. Being unemployed sucks. My wife is out of work right now due to some health concerns. And we have a 2-year-old baby. So it is crazy. But Mr. Mean always tends to land on his feet. If I go radio dark for a while, it could be because I'm living out of my car. Who knows? I doubt that. I'm pretty sure I'll find some sort of work. Best Buy is always hiring. If I have to go work there, I will. I'll do what I got to do. Hopefully the wife will get cleared from her doctor and be able to go back to work here real soon herself. So, although she's got to find a job too, because they laid her off from her job because of her illness. It is what it is, man. Life 101. Luckily, Minnesota has a really good health insurance program for unemployed people and social assistance. So we're getting in there. And thank you, Asla. I will definitely try to have fun. I'm getting ready to start a campaign of Scum and Villainy at my local game store. And looking forward to it. But then after we run that, I think we're going to run Warhammer Fantasy 4th edition. So I'll keep the channel updated with what's going on. As always, like and subscribe. Tell your friends. It really helps out the channel. Obviously, the more subscribers, the better. I try to do weekly content, sometimes 2 or 3 videos a week, as little as 1. Yep, Esper Genesis is a great game. I have an ongoing Discord game that I'm running in Fantasy Grounds, and we're enjoying it a lot. So if you haven't checked out Esper Genesis, go back in the archive, look at my review of it. It's a pretty cool system. But that's it for Dark Heresy 1st and 2nd edition. I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, give a like, thumbs up, and as always, peace, hair grease. And remember, Mr. Mean, as always, says, be nice.